Well, hello there. I'm Poppa Jon, and I love talking about heroes, and I love talking about horror. So if you enjoy those two things, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up icon as well. And today I wanted to talk about one of my all-time favorite horror franchises. It's in like my top 3, maybe even top 2 favorite horror franchises alongside Chainsaws from Texas. And so I just love this franchise, and I don't want to wait any longer. I want to talk about them. I want to rank them. So tell me your rankings in the comment section down below as we go on, and let's get this started. So first of all, I love all of the movies on this list. Every movie in this franchise I absolutely love, to varying degrees, to varying effects. They're not all the same quality necessarily, but I do love all of them. And so in last place, a movie I still love. It's the movie that pretty much is unanimously considered the worst, that being the 4th movie, The Final Destination. That being said, even though this is in last place, I adore this movie. I have the most nostalgia out of all of these movies is probably with this movie. So this is what I consider the first horror movie I ever saw. That being said, I did see like the Blade movies before this and like Hellboy. I had even seen like a couple of the scary movies before this. But this is the first proper horror movie that I properly sat down and watched as a horror movie. Because like the Blade movies, I consider them horror. But at the time that I watched them back then, I viewed them in the same way that I would view a Superman movie. Whereas this, I sat down and watched it because I wanted to watch a horror movie. Essentially for the first time. So I have a lot of nostalgia because without this movie, I might not have discovered John Carpenter's Halloween or, movies that are 10 times better than it. But that being said, I still get a blast watching this movie. I think it has so much of a so bad it's fun quality to it. Plus you mix in the nostalgia, it just makes... This is the one I've seen the most. This is the one I have watched and rewatched the most. So I love it. Like, yeah, if you look at it objectively, like I look back on it now as an adult, it's like, it's not very well made, but I still love watching it. But it does... I don't have enough nostalgia mixed in with another bad movie that I can put this above to keep it out of last place. There's just not another bad movie in the franchise, so nostalgia can't push it up further because of that. I wish it could. I wish this was a Batman and Robin, Batman Forever situation where I have nostalgia for the one that most people consider the worst, but I still think this one's bad, and so the nostalgia for this one bumps it up. You don't get that here.
Maybe Death's not actually coming for our family. Because that would be crazy.
Next up, we have the newest movie, that being Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, this is a huge jump, I guess, in objective quality from the 4th movie. And this is a movie that I'm very split and mixed on in terms of it as a Final Destination movie. If you look at it as a standalone movie, not necessarily a Final Destination movie, compared to the other Final Destination movies, is a weird sentence, I do think this might be potentially the best made overall in terms of the technical quality. But there's felt like there was something missing for me. And this is one that can definitely move up the most on rewatches because I might need to rewatch it again. This just kind of feels like the script was a Final Destination script. The characters were Final Destination characters, but it never felt like a Final Destination movie when it was all put together to me. So like the script was, the characters were, but the actual shots never felt, the actual like movie as a whole never felt like a Final Destination movie to me. There's something a friend of mine said on the drive there where they were saying they don't always like modern horror movies because the camera quality is too good. It stops feeling like a movie. And I don't necessarily agree with that statement as a whole, but I think there's something to it here. Whereas you don't have that early aughts feel to the atmosphere or the ambiance in this movie that you get in all of the other Final Destination movies, in my opinion. And so maybe that's what's missing. Maybe I just need some early aughts feels thrown into this movie that just aren't quite there. Maybe that's what's holding back. Or maybe I just need to watch it again at some point, and maybe it'll change my mind. The other thing is, I've never been a big fan of the whole resuscitation, like you die and get resuscitated. And so that's also the transition into the next movie on the list. And next we have Final Destination 2. This probably has the best opening sequence to any of these movies, with the log truck accident and just everything that plays out. It's an amazing set piece, and it's great for that reason. The main reason this one gets held back for me, like I said, I love all of these movies. These are all 3.5 to 4 stars, and then my number one is primarily for nostalgic reasons, a 5 out of 5 for me, but we'll get to that one. In terms of this second movie, Final Destination 2, I'm not a big fan of the whole dying and get resuscitating thing to cheat death. Before that, the whole having someone give birth to new life that wasn't supposed to exist, I thought that was a much better way to sort of cut off the chain. But then, you get the cop out how she wasn't supposed to die in the first place. And I just don't like the third act too much and how it plays out. And it probably has my least favorite ending out of all of them, with the barbecue kill. It's just, overall, it's just not one that, outside of the opening sequence and the elevator kill, it's not one that I necessarily always go back to. Get And next we have Final Destination, the first one, the one that jump-started it all. Now this one, I kept debating whether I was going to put it in third place or second place and have the movie that's at second place come down to third. Ultimately, this is the direction I went. I go back and forth. It's essentially tied for second place for me. I do love this movie. There are just certain things where, because I was introduced during the 4 and 5 sort of phase of this franchise and not so much the 1 through 3 phase of the franchise, I don't have as much connection to this one as a couple of the others. And so that's the main reason. I do really enjoy the fact that they bring in sort of the fact that he knew the plane was going to explode, and so it makes sense for the FBI to be there. Granted, most of them probably won't play out too much like that in terms of why would the FBI care? This is obviously some kind of freak accident. Whereas in the plane one, in the movie we have coming up as well, where you have sort of an FBI investigation going on, I love it when they include those, because I just think it makes sense. If you're looking as an outside viewer within that movie universe, not necessarily as someone in the chair watching the movie, you can see where they're coming from. I still think this is probably the best cast overall that we've had in the franchise, still to this day, where you have Stifler and Devon Sawa, and you just have all of the other cast of characters. The reason, though, it's in third place, it doesn't nail the landing per se, no pun intended. I've never cared too much for the ending, especially the power line sequence and how he gets flown and thrown back and everything. I do like the sign, the very end when they're in Paris and the sign and theater collapse. That being said, this is something, for whatever reason, never caught on to me until this watch, but Carter is an asshole to these two the entire movie, never once making up with them, and then he's just best buds with them. And I mean, enough time span has gone on, it says blah 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 months later, but you don't get to see that happen. But I mean, it at the same time, it does make sense. Trauma bonding. Trauma bonding. I said it twice. Let's move on. And next we have Final Destination 3. One of the reasons I love this movie so much is, first, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She's easily the best lead character and probably my favorite character in the franchise as a whole, regardless of lead or supporting. She's a great character. And then just roller coasters. This had the opposite effect on me that I think it was supposed to, because prior to me watching this movie, I had never really gone on a roller coaster. There's one roller coaster that I went on all the time, but it was the only roller coaster I would ever agree to go on. But after seeing this movie, I was going on roller coasters left and right whenever I had the chance to. So this kind of had the weird opposite effect on me. That being said, I still love this movie. I love how they incorporate the pictures, because I prefer sort of the picture premonitions. To me, it makes more sense than just, it's more sense than just simply, I had a vision. That is one part of sort of the mythology that they kind of got lost after this movie. Whereas with the second movie, one of my least favorite parts of the mythology with the whole resuscitation thing continues on. But this one, the picture thing doesn't. A lot of people that I've seen some few people, I don't know if I should say a lot, but a few people I've seen say that Final Destination gets repetitive and that their endings especially are always repetitive. They always get killed in the end. It's oh, we survived. No, you didn't. It's always the same predictability. But to me, that started with Final Destination 3. Because in the first movie, it was just Carter that died in the Paris sign and theater accident. In the second movie, the final scene is the barbecue explosion. Officer Burke and Kimberly still survive, and they're apparently still alive, according to Bloodlines. And then the third movie happens. That's the first one where, from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, every character essentially dies on screen. I think that is part of the DNA of a Final Destination movie, and the reason I think it works to me, and why it doesn't necessarily get repetitive for me, and why I think in the lore that should primarily, unless they do a part 1, part 2 type of thing. But the reason it doesn't necessarily get repetitive, and the reason I defend and think every Final Destination movie should in some way have an ending like that, like this, like 4, like 5, like Bloodlines, is because death is inevitable. You can't escape death. You might be able to delay it by killing someone to save you, so it skips you and goes to the next person. You might be able to delay it, but ultimately everybody dies. And so I think just within the mythology, when you're talking about death and escaping death, the fact of the matter is death is inescapable. So to me, it makes the most sense to have all of the characters die, since the main villain chasing them is death itself. Now, I want an emotional story, preferably an emotional story from start to finish until we get to that point. But ultimately, that's how I think the franchise works at its best. And in first place, we have Final Destination 5. Now, for the longest time, this is always my default answer when I think of what was the first rated R movie I saw in the movie theaters. I'd seen plenty before this, but they were all at home. They were never in the theaters. This is the movie I usually say is the first, but I always get the release dates mixed up because this came out in the same year as Scream 4. Scream 4 came out first, so I guess Scream 4 is technically the first one I saw. But this is the one, for as much as I love Scream 4, I do love that movie, but this is the one that stuck with me the most out of those two, by far the most out of those two. I have so much love and nostalgia for this fifth installment, and I couldn't believe it took 14 years to get a sixth movie, but I adore this movie. I think it has my favorite opening sequence. I think maybe the second one, because it was a lot more practical work, is better on a technical level, but I just think my personal favorite is the bridge collapsing. I can speed past a log truck on the interstate, but on a bridge where you only have a certain amount of lanes, especially in rush hour like that, you're not going anywhere until the bridge collapses or everyone in front of you keeps moving. And on top of that, this introduces probably my favorite element to the Final Destination lore, and when it comes to sort of quote-unquote escaping death, even though it's inescapable, And that is, if you kill someone, you take their life. And I think that just works so well because it's a part of the lore that sort of adds this psychological, like, element to it that's just like, could I kill someone if it means I could live for another 50 years? Could I do it without getting caught, without going to jail? You know, there's just a lot of things you can kind of just pick at, explore, and all of that. And that is one of the reasons I love it. And I think it's just a great addition to the lore of this. Plus, in terms of kills, my two favorite kills are in this movie, that being the gymnastics kill and the laser eye surgery kill, which I saw this in theaters when I was 13 years old. When I was 20 years old, I actually did get laser eye surgery. And so the fact that I knew this movie so well in my head, and that I was strapped in there like Alex from Clockwork Orange, my eyes wide open, and then they give you those numbing eye drops, and I turned blind, and I'm just strapped, I can't move, and I just have this scene running through my head the entire time. This is terrifying. Laser eye surgery is terrifying. I can tell you that from personal experience myself. But I've never done gymnastics, so I don't have a personal experience there. I just think the filmmaking in that scene is top notch with how they film the nail and how it eventually all plays out, and then the scorpion that the gymnastics girl, that Candace does, when she falls down and dies right in front of her boyfriend. Good stuff. The other reason I love this is because when I saw this for the first time in the theaters, the ending blew my mind. It blew my mind. That being said, on rewatch, I don't think they actually filmed it in the best way to make it make the most sense. You know, like, the writing of it was fine enough, but it was just sort of like they get there and they show them. There's not like a build-up, like you're in this scene and they're talking, and then all of a sudden you start hearing screaming and it's Alex and all of that, and then leaving. No, it just kind of glances over, sees a little commotion, and then sits back down. It's not a big reveal in execution. And then, just for an added little effort, the construction worker had cancer, so even after the one guy killed him, turns out he didn't have that long to live, and he's dead. Going back to the whole, they all die in the end. And I think this is the one franchise that can get away with that without it being too grim, because in a weirdly grim way, that's real life, because death is inescapable. And the other thing with Final Destination 5, one of the more non-nostalgic reasons why it's in first place is the fact that I think this is the perfect combination of your, like, early 2000s mixed in with sort of your late 10s, 2020s blockbuster horror. This kind of gets a great mix of that, where you get a lot of the blockbuster type of stuff with the bridge collapsing, and you just get this grand scale thing where I think Part 5 is the most cinematic of all the movies, but at the same time, it has that early nostalgic, that early 2000s feel that the other movies have, is that, like, especially the first three movies have. So this is just like a perfect blend. Whereas, like, with Bloodlines, you get this great, like, blockbuster horror movie, but it lacks that vibe of the first 5 movies. It has the script and the characters, but it doesn't have the, like, vibes. I feel like shit using that as a criticism. But it doesn't have that, like, environment. It doesn't have that feeling that the other movies give off. It just kind of feels, Bloodlines just kind of feels like a blockbuster horror movie named Final Destination. Now tell me your favorite in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell as well. Tell me your rankings in the comment section down below. I think I already said that. And I've been Poppa Jon.